Alright guys, so this is actually day 2 of me working on the Mini. I went ahead and got a head start on putting the car up on 4 jack stands, as well as working on the rear of the suspension. So I've already changed out the shocks, springs, and camber links in the rear. When I took out the rear tires, I actually found out that the previous owner had already installed the 19mm rear sway bar. Same model actually that I ordered, so I'm probably going to be listing that up on the forums. Maybe if you have the same model car, I could give you some pointers on the things that I had trouble with and that weren't in the Koni's instructions, which are basically just a few pictures, and it makes IKEA instructions look good. So let me show them to you. So for the rear suspension, I haven't gone to the front yet, but for the rear, this top portion, that metal, this plate, you're actually going to be reusing on the new suspension, and the hole for that actually won't, it's not big enough to fit the Koni's threaded portion that's going to slide through it. So you're going to have to actually drill out the hole in that metal plate and make it a little bigger. There's also a conical washer right above this that fits on top of that little foam pad, and that's actually going to have to be drilled out as well. Unfortunately, Koni doesn't provide the conical washer nor the top portion of this, probably for cost saving or something, but whatever the reason, you're going to have to drill out those two to make the actual new Koni yellows fit over the factory parts that you're going to be fitting. Also, another thing to note, if you're going to be installing these rear control arms as well, these two bolts back here, the inner portion, those are really difficult to get to, and the only way I found to actually access those is to hold one side of it with an 18mm wrench, and the other side you'll need a 1-inch extension on your socket, on your 18mm socket, to actually reach that. That's a really tough spot to get to. The exhaust is in the way, the heat shielding is in the way, and the bracket that holds the rear control arms is also in the way. So that's a tough spot to get to. Another thing, if your car has HID xenons, you will have leveling sensors on the driver's side rear and the driver's side front. More on the front in a second, because I actually have an issue with that. The new rear control arms actually won't have a spot for the bracket to bolt onto. So what Hotchkiss includes, if you buy all 4 of the camber links, is a small metal bracket with a large zip tie. So let me see if I can get a lower angle for you guys to see it better. That's the bracket for the sensor, and that is how I've attached it. It's just a simple zip tie, and that black portion on the bottom is the bracket that they include. It's a small metal bracket. So that actually ties the sensor, which is the small, what is it? That box right there, the metal box behind the fuel line, or the e-brake. That is a sensor, and that's going to attach with that arm right there to that bracket right there. And that's attached to the rear upper control arm using a zip tie. So that's another thing that wasn't included in any of the instructions. Alright, moving on to the front suspension. I haven't worked on this yet, so still have to change everything out. But an issue that I've noticed, and I ordered the part yesterday before it came in today, is that thing right there. The front HID xenon sensor, the level sensor, is actually crashed into the front CV boot and made a small tear in it, and what that did is it flung a bunch of grease all over the place. So there's grease up top, there's grease around here. I originally thought that maybe it was leaking from above, but upon further inspection, that box right there has actually moved into the CV boot. So luckily I noticed it quickly, and I won't have to replace the axle. I can just change out the CV boot. What that entails is me just removing the axle, taking out the inner CV boot, all the clamps and all that stuff, putting the new boot on and filling it with grease. So shouldn't be too difficult, since I'm already going to be taking out the strut here. I'll have a lot of room to work and get that axle out. On my previous car, the Subaru, this axle nut right here is a huge pain to get off, or at least it was on the Subaru. It's just binded over time. This car is a few years newer than the Subaru, so hopefully I won't have that issue. All the other bolts that I've taken off so far have been fairly easy, just a nothing a breaker bar can't handle. So hopefully it's the same up front. Okay, let's get to the actual install. I don't have the patience to take off the rear just yet. Oh, I didn't tell you guys. So the conical washer over here that sits right above this, can you actually see it? No. So it's right on top of that foam that sits on top of this metal plate, which I told you guys that you'd have to drill if you get the Koni yellows. That conical washer I installed upside down because I have an affinity for pain and suffering. If you do too, don't forget to like and subscribe. But that I'm gonna have to take out both of the rear struts again and flip that washer over, reassemble the strut, reinstall it. Huge pain. Okay, no instructions, but it's because they're self-explanatory. So this shape, this little groove right here, it fits perfectly in spot. You can't put this in the wrong spot. That's why they don't come with instructions. Ooh, shiny. So we have the Koni yellow here. Comes with the little adjuster at the top. I believe this is not going to actually stay on it. You'll keep this in your car, and then anytime you need to adjust firmness, you just pop this out and twist it. Simple as that. Oh, note for the rears, the instructions that come with the Konis tell you that you need to actually compress the shock fully and then twist it. I played around with that a bit and I found out that you actually don't need to at all. So if pretend this is the rear strut, you would hold it like this and then you just twist it while holding this in place. Alright, so I'm in the process of reassembling the new Koni yellows, and I'm going to be reusing the bump stops that were on the original suspension. One thing to note is when you're lowering the car, you're going to want to cut your original bump stops or order new ones. I'm going to be reusing mine, so I cut them. This is the original bump stop, and there aren't really any instructions for this online, but this top portion, this little ridge right here, come on, focus. This little ridge right here is what actually holds the dust boot. So in my case, since I'm using the Swift springs, it's going to give me about a 1-inch drop. So I cut this about 1 inch. I'm not sure what the rules are, but in this case I've cut about 1 inch to accommodate for the drop, because I don't want it bottoming out and riding on the bump stops all the time. So I'm just left with this top portion, and this ridge is what's going to hold the dust boot up. So it would go like this. All right, I'm going to assemble the strut now, and I'll be back soon. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is a new day, and as you can see, I don't have a beard anymore. But the part has finally come in. This part, the bump stop. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this. I'm going to shave off about 1 inch, and I also went ahead and fixed the boot. Let me give you guys a look at that. That's the new boot. So the only tips I could give if you've had that problem on your driver's side, first take a look at level sensor, the headlight level sensor, which is that black box right there. So that was initially bumping into the boot, and although all of the arms and things look like they were in good condition, the bracket that attaches to that metal beam right there, it was bent. So I just grabbed this tool right here, really easy. I just grabbed it and I bent it back, so now there's enough clearance between that and the boot. Shouldn't be a problem in the future. The biggest pain was getting the axle out, and with the help of my friend's giganto hammer right there, was able to pop that out and pop it back in. I put some anti-seize on the threads of the axle on the inside, so if I ever need to get it off in the future, it should just slide out. Anyway, with all that up, now that the bump stop's in, all I need to do is cut the bump stop and get the new strut and coil assembly on the driver's side, and then I should be good to go. All I'll need is an alignment afterwards and getting the tires back on. Here's the suspension. All that's left is to put tires on the car. Whoa. Where'd it go? And there she is. The drop isn't too substantial.